go. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to my sewing room today. Today, we're going to be working on some crazy quilting. I'm going to show you my favorite method of building the block. There's many different methods to do it, but today I'm just going to show you a simplified way that I enjoy doing. And we're going to explore some decorative stitches on the PFAFF machine. Today, I have the PFAFF Creative Icon 2. That's the machine I have, but there's decorative stitches on many of the other PFAFF machines. And we're also going to explore some other features of the machine too, just to elevate and make this block your own, if you will. So let me start out here first. Let's say hi to Meredith, Amy, and Ryan, who are in the background. So if you have some questions, just type them in. They'll relay them to me. So shout out to that wonderful crew there who's got my back. Also, I have a cat in here. He is sleeping, so hopefully he'll stay asleep. We'll never know what he'll do. Right now he's snoring, so good thing. So I want to show you something here. I'm going to bring up my computer, my screen for just a second, because I want to show you I want to show you this. This was a crazy quilt that I made many moons ago. This is probably one of my first. And it's pretty simplified. And the way that they did these blocks was you would take a 10 by 10 piece of fabric and you would layer a few of them together. And you would cut your template out. So if you look at these pieces, they're all pretty much the same pieces. It's just the way the block was rotated. So it looks almost uniform. And this was done on a machine that had some basic decorative stitches. And if you look close, you'll probably see some of my favorites that I use. That's not a very good picture. But I kind of stuck with basic stitches, and you know, that's what I had. There's some applique on here. So as I graduated in machines, of course I had more options. I no longer own this quilt. When I redecorated my home, I gave it to someone else who appreciates it. Not that I didn't appreciate it, it just didn't, you know, after it was hanging in the home for so many years, you kind of get sick of looking at it. All right, I'm going to stop sharing here. And I also want to show you, this was something I made, again, many moons ago. So again, it has some basic stitches on it. I also added some embellishments that I hand tacked on. And this was a photograph that I had. And I scanned it into the computer. And then I printed it out on fabric. So my base piece was a photograph. So you can do a photograph, you can do, I don't know, a quilt block, you can do a piece of fabric and fussy cut it. Sometimes you can find fabric panels that have small pieces. You can make that your center, and it doesn't have to be your dead center. But it's just, you know, it gives you a kind of a focal point. This has a focal point. I also made this purse just recently. And a lot of the stitches that I'm going to show you, I put on here. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to show you how I kind of made this block. When I first originally started doing this project, I was very set on doing nothing but 12 weight thread through this whole entire crazy quilt. And as I did a few of them, they just didn't have that oomph that I wanted because of the bold fabric choices that I chose. So I also added in some metallic threads. So that's a great way to add textures. I have metallics. I have some 30 weight threads. I have some 12 weight threads in there. And I'm going to talk about those in a little bit. But first, I want to show you how we build the base. And let's switch my camera here. So For your base, you start with, and I'm going to adjust my camera here. And I am farsighted, so it looks blurry to me with my glasses on. Hopefully this is good. So you start with a base, and this is just unbleached muslin, and we are going to start with a 5. You really want to start with a 5-sided. I can't say square because it really wouldn't be square then, would it? But we'll just say square for lack of better words. To get that 5 sides, all I do is just clip off a corner. Now, instantly, I have 5 sides. And the other thing that I do is this project is perfect for your pre-cut strips. You know, the ones you get in a roll. These are 2.5 inches wide. You can go smaller. They also have prepackaged ones that I think are 1.5, but the 2.5 work out perfectly. So to get started, right now I do have regular 40 weight sewing thread in my machine. And I'm just going to lay these on top of each other. So you have some choices here. You can either run, I'm going to take this pin out and put it here. You can run against the raw edge, or if you want more of a wonkier look, and that's what I go for, you can stitch on the diagonal. I'm going to stick this pin right where that fabric underneath ends. So this gives me a focal point of where I need to drive to. And I'm going to start stitching. And you can see I went on a diagonal. Oops. I'm using my multi-function foot control. Once I have that, then I take my scissors and then I fold that back. See how that's how easy it is? Now we just go in a circle, and I'm just going to randomly grab some strips. And like I said, I like to do it so it's on the wonky side. I'm not tying off because the knot might get chopped off when I cut the fabric. I found this is an easy way of doing the crazy quilt blocks. I enjoy it because it's very free form. It's just very organic, if you will. There's no rhyme. There's no reason. And I'm just going to keep going. I'll do a few more here so you can see. I want to know where that is. It's nice having that multi-function foot control. I don't have to lift my hand. So there you have it. And here you might look at this angle here. Let's go ahead and do that so that you can see how these start coming together. And again, I am just randomly grabbing some pieces here. So when I made my the purse, I totally missed the mark here. I am on the PFAFF Icon 2, and this machine has exclusive technique stitches. And one of them is a floating stitch. And a floating stitch is really awesome when you sew 2 pieces together. So I am going to switch my machine. I'm going to menu 8, which is techniques. And if I go to submenu 5, I'm just going to pick any one. I'm going to choose. Usually I go for the mushrooms first, but I'm not going to do the mushrooms today. So and like I said, I missed the mark. I should have thought about this ahead of time when I was stitching my bag together, but I was just in this rhythm of going in this circle, if you will, and I totally forgot about doing those stitches, but we're going to do them now. Let's take a few moments. Maybe I won't go all the way down. The floating stitches, they are also on the 720. They're on the Icon 1. They're on the Icon Performance. I really enjoy the floating stitches for sewing fabrics together. And pull this out. And there you have it. There are your stitches. So because that stitch is on the inside, that connecting stitch right there, it's what holds it together. So there's no holes when you flip this over. So that's pretty darn cool. And like I said, when I put my bag together, when I was putting this together, it didn't hit me to do any of those stitches. I was just in this rhythm of going in this circle of putting this together. By the way, this bag, this is removable. I've had this pattern in my drawer for a few years, and I'm like, yeah, don't know when I'm going to do it, but this was a perfect project to do it. And if ever I get bored with this, I can just take this off and put something else on it, and there you have it. Extends the life of your handbag. Okay, so once we go into a circle, you end up with something that looks like this. And again, do you see mine is not in the dead center? And you notice I also did not do floating stitches on this one either, because I was just in that world of going in a circle. So let's talk about now some decorative stitches. When you're doing the decorative stitches, it is highly recommended that you use a stabilizer underneath. Just because you have 2 layers of fabric here, don't think that you can get away without using a stabilizer. It doesn't have to be as heavy as this, but this is what I had. I had a scrap left over from something else, so I'm going to use it. You still want to use that stabilizer, even though there's 2 layers of fabric here. Also, I would take this over to the iron, and I already did it on this one, and I would give it a nice press. So let's talk about threads here. I have some fun threads. And let's see if I can lay them out so that you can see the difference between them. So this one is a 12 weight cotton. And I am going to switch threads here. So I'm going to take this one off. And that is a basic sewing thread. It's your construction thread. So do you see the difference between how thicker they are from one another? And I'll lay that here so that you can see. This one is a 30 weight thread. So it's in between your standard sewing thread, your construction thread, and your 12 weight thread. This one is a variegated. So again, great option for doing crazy quilting. It adds texture through color. And so those are great as well. And this one, I was like, I'm going to use this on all of them. And this is actually also a 12 weight thread. It does look slightly thicker than this 12 weight thread because this one is 100% wool and it has a halo to it. If you're a knitter, you know what I mean when I say a halo with yarns and things. And this kind of has a halo because this is 100% wool. So it looks a little bit thicker, but it is still a 12 weight. And then, of course, we have here, we have our metallic thread. And for the project that I was doing, I added these metallic threads because I needed something of a standout for the fabric choices that I chose. My focus is going out probably because I'm bumping my camera. So I do have a question. So do you only finger press the whole way? Normally, yes, I do only finger press as I'm going. I am careful, though, not to press too hard with my finger because you can stretch it out. Some people just like really give it, a harsh press. You don't need to do that. I do sometimes use this. This is just a tool that you can get at your local dealership. It's called a roll and press or press and roll. So that is, let me just show you. So if I stitched this and when I flip it back, you could just press it that way. But yes, as I'm building the square itself, I will just finger press it or use this tool. I'll give it a nice good press once the whole section is completed. Okay, so let me talk about these threads for just a moment because there are some things that you need to do when using these specialty threads. For the 12 weight threads, and I'll look at you, for the 12 weight threads, you really want to use a 120 needle. I have a 120 universal needle in my machine today. It's not my first choice. Honestly, my first choice is going to be a 120 top stitch needle. That top stitch needle has a slightly wider eye than the universal needle does, but I didn't have any on hand. I did have universal. It worked out just fine for me. For a 30 weight thread, you could use the 120, but if you don't have a 120, a 110 universal or top stitch will work with that. And for metallic thread, I will tell you if I'm using metallic thread, I will use a metallic needle. Although I was lazy the other day when I was putting this purse project together, I didn't change my needle. I left the 120 in. Yes, I know I left it in. And believe it or not, that 120 universal worked really well with that metallic thread. So let's stitch some things now with a 12 weight thread. And I want to show you, let me grab my purse here. I have some stitched out. So let's see if we can get a close look at this. Can you see this blue one here? Oh, I'm still a little out of focus. Sorry, guys. So if you can see this blue thread here, that almost looks like hand done, but it was done on the sewing machine using that 12 weight wool thread. It just gives it that nice puff and it gives you a good texture. And there were some things that I learned about using this particular thread on the machine. Thread up my machine here. And I was able to use the automatic needle threader, which was super sweet. A few things that I learned, and I'm going to switch back to this, to the machine. I don't know if you can see this. Let's see if we can get a little bit closer. When you use the automatic needle threader, sometimes your thread comes up back here. You really want to pull that down before you get started and put the thread behind your needle. The reason being is because that is going to get caught up. And I've noticed that if I didn't put it back there, what was happening was the thread was breaking. I also turned off my automatic tie off in the beginning because, again, I noticed that that was kind of chopping off my thread in the beginning. So I turned that off and I started working out a lot better. And I'm going to switch gears here, and I'm going to move this over. So that you can see my screen. How is that? That good? I'm going to tighten this up. Not always a smooth transition. Sorry, guys. So up here, we have our load stitch. Right now, I'm in the techniques because we did do the floating stitch on that one. So here are the floating stitches. I'm going to load my stitch. Oops. Load stitch. And I'm going to go back to menu 3, which is needle art. And in submenu 3, we have antique hand embroidery stitches. So these really lend itself to the crazy quilting because they are meant to mimic hand stitching. So they are already a little puffed up. They're not as flat as some of the other decorative stitches. There are triple stitches built into this, but I also use them with, and I'll try, I haven't tried this one. Dare I try something on screen? So let's try this one. The other thing that I also have learned when using the 12 weight thread is I will go into edit stitch and I'm going to make the length a little bit longer because this thread is going to, especially the wool, it's going to fill in more of your area than a 40 weight thread would. So I did go ahead and I wanted to lengthen that up a bit so that we have more space for this. So let's see how this stitches out. Okay. Is that in focus? Told you I'm farsighted, so when my glasses are on. Okay, and I'm just going to stitch across the seam. Also, I found out you need to go slower. So if you have a heavy foot, you want to turn your speed down on your machine so that if you do go heavy on your foot control, it's not going to let you go past a certain point. Or you can use your stop button. I am just the kind of person that uses my foot control, so that's what I'm going to do. And I did slow my machine down. If I went too fast, then yes, your thread is going to break. So let's see this. Can you see that? No. You see that? It looks very much like a hand, like you used the floss that you would do by hand, which is super cool because it really gives texture. I'm going to check and see if there is a question here. Okay, no question. All righty. Let's move on. So I told you you can go ahead and you can also use metallic threads, and I did use metallic threads throughout this whole entire project, and I just experimented with the stitches. I just explored the whole machine and said, oh, that stitch looks cool. Oh, that stitch looks cool. And on some of it, so here on these metallics right here, These were radiant stitches. I love the radiant stitches because it doesn't just stay within the seam. It protrudes out. So it really fills in an area, which is super cool. This one, I felt like, again, I was experimenting. Oh, this one. This stitch right here, if you look at it, I used the 12 weight thread and I thought it just didn't have enough zhuzh to it. So I went over it with the metallic thread and it gave it even more texture and a different look. So I used a contrasting thread. And the piercing power on this machine is pretty amazing that it went through without a hitch, which I was super happy about. The other thing I did was for more texture, and I'm talking about texture because crazy quilts really do offer texture between your threads, between the embellishments that you may put on it. And this one, I used the ribbon attachment. And I only did the single ribbon. You could do a triple ribbon. You could do a double ribbon. But I really wanted, if you can see, those little guys. I really wanted to add those two to the bag because it just looks like they're sliding down. The ribbon, which I thought was super fun and kooky and a little more whimsical. So you have those options here. Let me show you this one too. This stitch here. This green one, again, it's standing out because I used the 12 weight wool thread. It's super cool. Someone's asking if I tied off when I used the hand look. I believe I did tie off when I finished, just because you do need to still knot it. If for some reason your thread is breaking during that tie off, you can leave them longer and then take them to the back and tie them off. But I'm almost certain I did use the tie off to do it with the automatic cut. Good question. Okay, so the other thing that was super cool that I thought would be really fun was after I had the whole fabric embellished with my stitches, and trust me, the stitches, they can be time consuming because you need to slow down. And it took me, I was in front of my machine for almost all day yesterday finishing up that outer bag, but I was having a good time. I was having a zen moment, if you will, because I was exploring my machine. I was testing out stitches. I was testing out threads. I was just making a good time of it. Then as I looked at it, I thought, I don't want to add a bunch of buttons or anything like that. So within the fabric spaces outside of the seams, I thought it's a little bare. So I hooped up some tearaway stabilizer, and I would take the other one off. And I laid that in the hoop. I used a spray adhesive. I know not everyone enjoys the spray adhesive. I don't mind it. I don't have a reaction to it, and the smell doesn't bother me. So I am prone to use that spray adhesive. If you cannot use a spray adhesive, you can take this into place with some painter's tape, embroidery tape, or something like that. So what I did was I was able to scan this into the machine, and then I was able to go in and let me see if I could just take the foot off. Maybe I could just, unfortunately, no. I'm looking at my space, and I am not going to be able to scan this in because the hoop is going to hit all of my camera equipment that is sitting behind my machine. So I'm not going to scan it in, but, oh man, I wish I can. You know what? Let's do it. I'm going to move my stuff so that you can see the scan. Give me 1 second. We're improvising. All righty. So where you want to go is a little out of focus. This could be fiddly. Sorry, guys. Let's see. It's out of focus. I can see that. It is. And you can see my pirate hanging on my door. Okay. I think that is the best I'm going to be able to get it right now. But what we do is we go back to home. And I want to go to embroidery. And I'm going to say okay. And I'm going to go into my hoop options, which is down here at the bottom. Let's see if I can pull this out. Hoop options at the bottom. And if I say, oops, hoop options. And I'm using the 360 by 260 hoop. So you do want to make sure that that is chosen. And we choose start hoop scan. And yes, we do. It's going to tell me to attach the hoop. And you want to attach the hoop before you say okay. Because right now, if I were to say okay, it instantly goes into scanning of the hoop. I am going to move my thread out of the way because if I don't, the camera will catch that thread and it will look like it's tuft. If you know what I mean, when you tuff a pillow, that's what it'll look like. So, and then we'll say okay. And now it's going to scan this hoop. And it's taking multiple pictures. So it's pretty cool. Because now we're going to be able to go into our embroidery designs and add some stuff to it. It does take a few moments. So if there are any questions, I will answer those. Very good question. So someone had asked, if you're using a metallic thread or a 12-weight thread, what bobbin do you have in your machine? I'll put this back on me while scanning. I do use a 60-weight embroidery bobbin. I found works best for me. Don't try and put a 12-weight thread in your bobbin and on the top. 12-weight thread in your bobbin, that's something totally different. That's called bobbin work. We're not doing that today, but that would be just a hot mess, a mess. That's heated up. You don't want that. So yeah, I use just your basic embroidery 60 weights. We are almost done here. So I wanted to add some things in this machine and some of the other machines as well. In the embroidery mode, we have a category called minis. And those are perfect for putting into the dead space within your fabric. And again, you can use metallic threads. You can use your regular embroidery threads. Be careful with the 12-weight thread in embroidery mode. Again, those designs are pre-digitized, assuming that you're going to be using a 40-weight embroidery thread. So when you're using the 12-weight thread, again, that 12-weight thread takes up more space in an area than a 40-weight thread will. However, I did do one of them, and it's hard to see because I matched my colors really well. Right here, do you see the center of that organic flower? I did use a 12-weight thread, but that particular mini design was fairly open in the first place. So I just said, let's try it with the 12-weight thread and see what comes out. So I think it added great texture. I wish I had a 12-weight wool thread that was maybe variegated, but I don't think the wools come in variegated. The cottons come in variegated, but what? I had the wool sitting next to me, so I grabbed that color. If I would have put some thought into it, maybe I would have grabbed the 12-weight cotton that was variegated just to give it a different look. So let's go back to the machine. And I can see this is out of focus. I'm so sorry. Let's see. Oh, wait, sweet spot. I think we found it. How's that? Okay, so right now you don't see anything. What you need to do to get your background up is you just go down the hoop options, which is at the bottom down here. You don't see it. It's down there. And there is now what I scanned in. And I will tell you, I've scanned in before and put my hand down there as it was scanning. And it took a picture of my hand in there. That's creepy. Don't do that. Over here, we have our built-in designs. And we have, PFAFF exclusive. We have signatures, birds, insects, all kinds of stuff. But we also have right here this mini category. And that's where my designs came from that are on my handbag because they were the perfect size to fill in space. And the one that I used with my 12 weight thread is, and I should write this stuff down, but I won't. Forgive me. I did use this one with metallic thread. Worked out great. I did try that one, and I can show those to you. Oh, here it is. This is the one that I used with a 12 weight thread. Do you see how open and airy that is? So if I were to use a 40 weight thread with that, it would still look very open, but the 12 weight thread filled in that area and it just gave a great texture, which I enjoyed. So let's bring in, because I like them, I know that there are some crowns in here, and I did use the crown. Of course I used the crown. I'm a princess. Where are you, crowns? There you are. Oh, and a spider web. I did the spider web also in 12 weight thread. I'll show you that when I bring my bag. When I show my face again, I'll show you on the bag. Downfall is that I did, I'm going to talk to you real quick. I did all of this stitching and adding and embellishing, knowing that I had a certain pattern piece that I was working with. And I did do the spider web in a 12 weight thread. And unfortunately, it's here in the seam. Let me see. Can you see it? It's right here. I was very disappointed, but is what it is. This was an organic project. Live and learn, right? So try and maybe map out where your seams are going to be. Maybe trace your pattern piece out onto your block that you created so that you have an idea of what's going to be caught in the seam, because I was like so excited how well that spider web came out with the 12 weight thread, and it's hardly seen, but it's okay. It's not the end of the world. Okay, back to the machine. So I'm going to bring in this crown and do a long touch and hold. And there it is. And I don't know what happened to my screen because that looks morphed. But you see, you can just add that in. You can go in and you can edit the designs, and you can just place them where you want them to be within that space. Oops. And let's just. So that gives you an idea of what you can do. And I did metallic threads for that. And what I did was I picked a few, went over to the embroidery side, stitched them out, sat back, looked at it, and said, nope, I can use some more. And I just kept going back and forth between the screen, just adding more of the minis. You could put an initial in there as well. You can also bring over some sewing stitches onto the embroidery side. And I did do that with this particular spider. So that is actually one of the sewing stitches that is in the miscellaneous category. And I chose the spider because every Victorian crazy quilt that you look at, for some reason, there's a spider and a spider web on it. I don't know why. It just is. Maybe someday I'll venture out and down a rabbit hole and find out why there's a spider. Is there some significance of it? I don't know. If you know, please put it in the comments. I'd like to know. I have a question. When and how do you add batting to your quilting? Right now, because, well, for the purse that I did, I was just creating my fabric. So I didn't have any batting in there. This whole entire, I hate to keep bringing this up, but this was a perfect thing to do with crazy quilting. This portion doesn't have any batting in it. What it has is the 2 layers of the fabric that I did. So my base layer of my muslin and then my crazy patch on top of it. And then I fused a woven fusible behind it to give it more strength. I didn't want a batting in there. I did not want that outer to be super stiff. If you were to make this into a large quilt, if you will, what you can do is you have to think about it. There's 2 things that you can do. You can just create blocks, just, like I did the other day. I was just sitting in front of the machine, just going in that circle and creating these blocks. And then you can piece those blocks together to make a whole entire quilt top. The downfall of doing this is, well, let me pick my words. You'd have to do, I would choose to do double quilting, if you will. I would do all of my decorative stitches on those individual blocks and then sew the blocks together. And I would treat that as a quilt top and then make my quilt sandwich with that layer of all my squares and then my batting and then my backing. That is the route I would take. And then I would probably, to do the quilting, and would probably do something like a stitch in the ditch, or I would maybe do an echo quilting around a shape, something like that, possibly with an invisible thread so it doesn't compete with all of the decorative stitches that I put on to my individual pieced blocks. You can also just create your crazy blocks, sew those together, and use the decorative stitching as your quilting. That's an option as well. But sometimes the heavier weight thread, you will need to adjust your tensions because that heavier weight thread is going to come to the back. So tensions do come in place. So you have those 2 different options. Me, I'm going to go for doing all my crazy quilting with the stitches and everything before I actually make it a quilt. But the option is there. It all depends on what you like. Me, if this was a quilt I was going to use, I wouldn't want all of those heavy stitches sitting on the back of the quilt where it would touch my skin. I know I'm a princess. I just wouldn't like that. But that is, if it's a wall hanging, maybe it doesn't matter. So you have those options. That was a very good question. So did that. I added, and of course I did a pink crown in metallic thread because, that's who I am. One other thing I want to show you, I went straight into the embroidery, but I also want to show you that if for some reason you feel that there just are not enough decorative stitches on your machine, with some of the PFAFF machines, like the Icon 2, the Icon 1, the 720, the Performance, and some of the, I don't want to say older machines that are no longer in our line. I think the Sensation or the Vision, I'm not quite sure which one or both of them do. They have what's called Stitch Creator. So let me take you into Stitch Creator because you now have ultimate freedom in creating your own stitches or editing a stitch that's on the machine to get a totally different look, which is super cool. So let me go back to our screen and let's take a look at that. Oops. Hopefully the screen is still where it needs to be. I am going to go back into sewing mode. Sorry for the jump, but I just remembered all that. And yep, I want to clear. So here are our stitches. And I am going to go to needle art. And we have subcategories, and I know that I want to go, these are needlework stitches. Was it this one? I'm questioning myself. Nope, I think it was decorative stitches. Sorry. Decorative stitches. More decorative stitches. There's so many. You may not even need to create anything, but that's okay. You can create something because it is fun and it is uniquely you. I'm going to choose number 31, and we are going to close this. I'm going to take a peek and see if you guys can see this. Okay, I'm going to look at my screen. So there's two ways that we can edit this. I'm just going to long touch and hold, and a menu comes up, and here I have Edit in Stitch Creator. And I know I'm in Stitch Creator because this is labeled up here. Right now, all of the stitches are orange. That means every single one of them is highlighted. I'm going to click on Select Multiple to turn that off. If I go up to 48, so right there, you can see number 48 is selected. Now I'll select multiple, and I am going to, what I'm doing here is, if you see those turning orange, I'm going to delete those stitches. I know it's a beautiful stitch, but we're trying to make it ours. So if I go into Edit Stitch, down here, I have a little garbage can icon, and if I click on that, it deletes it. I want to get rid of this area as well, and if I come up here, and this tells me I am on stitch 3 of 39, and that's exactly where I want to be. I'm going to select multiple again, and this time I'm going to go downward so that you can see that we're going to eliminate that portion of the stitch as well. So when I just go to delete, now I have this different stitch, and I can say okay. And that's what the stitch looks like now. And I have that stitched out somewhere. It's on the floor. I'll show you that in a moment. Let's say I want this to be puffed up a little more. And I can. All I need to do is just long touch and hold and go back into Edit in Stitch Creator. So it's our stitch. Right now it's all selected again. And down here, and you may not see it, but there's a menu option, Edit Stitch. And one of my choices is right here. It has a 3 times. If I touch that, it makes it now a triple stitch. So now it's, it's a stitch on steroids, if you will. It's really puffed up. So once you make a change to it, it's not, you don't have to go through creating the whole thing. I can keep touching that menu and flipping back and forth to Stitch Creator and make changes. And over here, you can see that it is how it's formed. You can also save these stitches. So if this is something that you sat here for an hour and you moved stitch points and you made this masterpiece of a stitch, save it because you may not get back to it. I already have these saved, so I'm not going to do it again. And I'm just going to say okay. And now I want to show you what these stitches look like because I did stitch them out for you. See, can you see those? Are we still focused? it looks like we're still focused. So this one here is the original stitch. Are we focused? This is the original stitch done with my basic construction thread, which is a 40 weight. This one here is the edited stitch where we took off the little flower petals. And again, this was with a basic construction thread. This was a triple stitch. So remember I showed you how we did the triple stitch? Again, with just a basic construction thread. So you now have 3 different looks here. I took that same stitch. This one is just the basic edited stitch with a 12 weight thread. This one was the triple stitch with a 12 weight thread. And this one was, I think, the triple stitch with a 30 weight variegated thread. So again, you have different looks, you have different textures. It's just, you have all kinds of options here. Okay, but before we move forward, I hope there's no questions. I hope I explained everything okay. I hope I inspired you to make up some of these crazy quilts. I love them, but I do want to show you one thing for those of you who love doing things with your embroidery unit and with the software. So let me clean up my mess here. And I am going to share my screen. And there we are. I'm almost out of time. I'm going to go into my Sewnet library. And one exciting thing I want to share about my Sewnet library, if you have not been in there for a while, just last week, if this word right here, it says studio on it. It used to say Knowledge Center. It now says studio, and it has, oh, I'm so excited about this. It has how-tos, and it has projects. It has some news. So if you click on how-tos, you have some different categories that you can choose from to go straight to that category. So let's click on, I'm just going to click on Home Deck because that's what's in front of me. Right now, there are 3 articles there. And it gives you instruction how to sew on buttons. So that's super cool. This is new. Like I said, it just launched last week. And we're really excited about this. They are adding new content weekly. Again, don't forget, every Friday we add new embroidery designs to the library. So tomorrow, stop by mysewnet.com and check out what has been added. And also, don't forget to stop by and check out all of the new projects. And we're posting them regularly. So this is, I said it once before, I'm going to say it again. We're excited about this. But what we came here for is, I want to search the library. And, oh, I must have been in the studio. That's why. So there we go. We'll put Crazy Patch. I know it's called Crazy Patch because I looked at it already. Crazy Patch. And let's search. So it found 40, but I can tell you right now there are 12 different squares that you can choose from that are already Crazy Quilt. And it is, the base is also done in the hoop. So you're doing a stitch and flip in the hoop. So you're creating the patch and then it's going to sew the decorative stitches on top of it. If you're not completely happy with how these look, you can take them into the software and change them. And I am going to bring up one of my You can send it directly to your sewing machine, or you can have it. I saved it to the cloud. So I know it lives in the cloud, and we're going to open up some software here. It's thinking, and it went to the wrong window, and that's okay. I'll pull it over here, and there you have it. So this is the original size of the square. It is a little bit on the small side. As you can see, it's 119, so it's almost 5 inches. It's not that big, but they'll stitch out pretty fast. The other thing that you'll notice here is that there's only 2 colors. You have the gray, and the gray is where you're going to do your stitch and flip for in the hoop piecing. There are stops built in. I did take this through Design Player and made sure of it before I sent it over to my machine. So I wanted to see how it's stitched out. This is a great tool to use if you're not sure, but it does show you that there are stops built in, even though it's all, see, there it is, even though it's all one color. As for the yellow, you can see it is all the crazy stitching. There is no stops built into that, unfortunately. But you can easily take those out and put in your own stitches that appeal to you. And it is as simple as you using the Modify tab. Now, you do need to have the gold version or the platinum version of the software in order to have the Modify tab. But if I go over to Modify and I uncheck what I want to keep, and I select everything I don't, oops, I fell off of it. I want to keep the gray, and I'm going to box select all of the yellow, and it's as simple as delete. So now all of my crazy stitches are gone. The decorative stitches are gone. So that's what's left. All of the gray, that is your piecing in the hoop. You can also resize this if you wanted to fill this hoop, and I forget what hoop I have on here. I do have the 150 by 150. You can resize this if you wanted to. You can go 20% up, 20% down so that you can fill the hoop. Don't forget, we also have the 200 by 200 hoop, and there is also the 260 by 260 hoop that is available. So you can make these a little bit larger. And where I'm going to go is if I go into frames and I click here on motif underline, and then scroll across here to select motifs. I can select a motif. So what the motifs are is basically the built-in stitches that are in your sewing machine. And let's go to PFAFF. So here are all those stitches. And let's take a peek at the hand look quilting stitches. And that's what all of these are. I'm just going to choose one. You have the option, you can change the height, the width, you can do it proportionally, unproportionally. You can also change the gap between the individual stitches, and you can also change the length of it. For this demo, I'm just going to stay at the default. Here, I can also change the length, and I can also choose repeats. So for this one, I'm going to say, I'm just going to put in 12 and say apply. And there are my stitches. I'm going to head to the Home tab. And do you see what happened here? Because I had the main embroidery selected, it attached itself to that. So I forgot to deselect that. So I want to deselect it before I go to the frames, and I'll just click apply. Now it's its own entity. And if you go home, we can position this where we want to position it. I'm going to zoom in on it because do you see that right there? That's our rotate. So we're able to rotate and position it where you want it. Let's see if it's going to give me my little rotate. So you have all of those options. Through my experimenting, and I'm not positioning these perfect, but you get the idea of what's happening. Right now, this is all one color because this came over as one entity. The downfall of it, of doing it all right on the frames tab, is it does come over as one entity. And if you don't like it, or if it's too long, too short, and you don't want to change, you don't want to mess with resizing it, and you easily can resize it. It's not a big deal, but it's one entity. I'm going to deselect this and I'm going to show you another option that you have. I'm going to go back to the frames tab. I'm staying on my motif underline and I'm going to select a different motif. And just because we can, let's choose a scallop. I'm going to use the default just for the demo. And I'm going to change my repeats to 1 and click apply. And I did it again. I attached it to, there we go. So now it's just one entity. I can now go into Encore and I can choose to do it as a line. And I can select how many repeats I want. I'm just going to do 6 because it's there and I can preview it. And now that I see what it looks like, if I'm not happy with that, if I know it's not going to work, I can change my repeats. We'll just say 10 and then click preview again. So I have the option with Encore to keep doing a preview. And if I click on the home tab, oops, you got to click apply. Apply. And do you see that our handles are orange? We can still do some adjusting and editing because they're not set, they're not fixed as stitches yet. So we can do some adjusting to this if we wanted to. The downfall of doing it this way, so there's a plus and minus for both ways, is if you notice you have all of these, each entity is its own. It could be fun because you can go in and change every other color so that every other scallop is a different color. That's an option. It could be fun, a little time consuming. So if it's, you know, not what you signed up for, you don't have to do that. But with the modify tab, it is super easy. Oops, I got to fix it as stitches. So it was telling me it's fixing it as stitches. And say, okay. Did it go into modify? Oh, is it too big for the hoop? There, we'll just make it smaller so it's, now we can go into modify. Oh, multiple items are selected. I did this earlier today. Let's see if I can go into modify now. Oh, come on. Oh, you know what? I'm going to combine all selected. Now we did it. Okay, missed a step. So I'm back in the modify tab. And over here in the design panel, if I click on number 10, that highlights that particular stitch. And just below that, we have what's called merge color blocks. And I can just click on this arrow. Oops. Go back to 10. And do you see what's happening here? I'm just, because they're all blue, I am just merging one right on top of the other. So now I just have one color and it will stitch out as one entity and I can change them all at one time. So having that modify tab allows you to do multiple things and not just delete something. I was able to combine everything together, which is super cool. So you have, trying to get back to you here. So you have ultimate freedom with the software. You really can go in and make something yours. It's nice that crazy quilting patch is there because it gives you a base, and then you're able to go ahead and add the things that you want. If you also have one of the machines that has Design Creator on it, you could possibly just make up your blocks and use Design Creator and create those lines in Design Creator as well. So there's so many possibilities that you can play with here, that you can truly make it your own. Again, with some of those designs there, just be careful when you're using a different weight thread. You might want to experiment before you go ahead and, you know, throw that 12 weight or 30 weight a thread on your machine and think it's all going to be working out good, because in the background, it's assuming that you're using a 40 weight embroidery thread. So I hope that makes sense. Hopefully I have inspired you and you will go forth and make beautiful things. But before we go today, I want to tell you that our next My Sew Net Live is Wednesday, February 8th at 2 o'clock Central Time with Mickey, who will be showing you how to sketch on the Mac machine, computer. And then our next PFAFF Facebook Live is Thursday, February 16th at 2 o'clock Central Time, again with Mickey, who will be demonstrating the new circle attachment templates, which are really cool. You got hearts, you've got all kinds of different designs. So now we're just adding on to our circle attachment, which is super fun. So I hope you all enjoyed this little program today, and I can't wait to see you back in my sewing room again. Have a good day.